I came to this interview on my free will. No, there was nothing promised to me for doing this interview.
Excellent.
Yes, everything that I say at this interview will be the truth. I met Donald Trump at some parties I attend that I was working for Mr. Jeffrey Epstein. There was about 3 or 4 times that I had encounters with Donald Trump. I was 13. The first time that I met Donald Trump was at a party at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. There was an orgy going on, and he was kind of watching off in the distance, and he basically asked if I could come over and give him a hand job. And at first, I wasn't very comfortable with it. This was like my first party, and I didn't think that was my responsibility. But my recruiter told me that I needed to do it, so I agreed to. And then he, I began to. Sorry, this is a little difficult, but. Before I gave him a hand job, he kind of slapped my hand away and said, you need to use a glove. And the recruiter ran over and handed me a glove and said, no one touches Mr. Trump's penis without a glove. So I needed to use a glove. I gave him a hand job, and then immediately after, he had an orgasm, he left, and I didn't see him again at that party. Jeffrey Epstein is a billionaire friend of Donald Trump's that was responsible for throwing the sex parties. I originally came to New York trying to be a model, and in my travels I met a girl named Tiffany there who was very interested in me and said that that's what she did, is that she helped girls, get what they wanted, and she could help me get into modeling. That she knew a lot of people that were higher ups, and that it would be no problem. And so that's why, but I would just basically have to come model at a couple of events and meet some people. It would be no sweat. So of course I went. That sounded like no big deal. And she was recruiting the girls to come to these parties, and they all looked. Most of them were, my age. There was, maybe a couple girls that were maybe 14 or 15, but it seemed to me like we were all very young. So,
okay.
Jeffrey Epstein knew that I was 13 years old. When he interviewed me, he asked me to get down to my bra, just my panties, and I thought that was weird, but modeling, maybe it was something about my figure. And he asked that I give him a massage. So then he asked me my age. He asked me, and I told him, told him that I was 13. I told him why I was there, and he basically said, "Well, you'll do. I'm sure that you'll fit pretty nicely here." And then he tried to. Basically slip himself inside of me, and I pushed him away, and I said, I'm because at that point in time I still believed that there was models, and then there was the girls that did that. Like, I thought there was a separation. So I told him that I wasn't interested in that, but he said that I would do. And as far as Donald Trump, he knew that I was 13, and I believe that Tiffany told him he seemed to take a liking to me because I was I was so young, and I was also a virgin. So I don't know. It seemed like he wasn't really into having girls that were liked by the other guys. He kind of, the whole glove. He kind of liked things to be his first. If that, for lack of a better term, but he was the one who wanted to get to a girl before everyone else did. Donald Trump knew that I was 13 because the first night that I was there, Tiffany actually suggested that, and she had a whole bunch of different wigs, and I expressed interest in them. I always told her that I would love to walk around with blue hair, and so I tried some on, and there was a blonde wig that she said that looked great on me. So I wore that wig, and Donald Trump had specifically asked about me because I remind him of his daughter, and she said, well, she's 13 as well. So he knew the first time that he saw me, but he took a liking to me because I look like his daughter. The reason I'm coming out now is when it happened originally, I just wanted to forget about the whole incident. And when I saw that he was running for president, I felt it was my responsibility to come out and tell our country what kind of man this person is. I don't think that he should even be the dog catcher, let alone running the greatest country in the world. After I met Tiffany at the bus station, she took me to, basically went to her house, her apartment, and got ready. I put on a blonde wig because it seemed fun to pretend to be someone different, but we went to the party that I was basically interviewing for, and Jeffrey Epstein was the one that was running the party. He had a quick meeting with everyone that was employed there, and then he had a private interview with me. The first time that I met Jeffrey Epstein, he did try to force himself inside of me without getting the go-ahead or anything, and then it was probably about the third or fourth party is when he basically forced. It was another massage, and it was basically like, it wasn't sex, but there was penetration, and I told him that I didn't want that, but he kind of got a little irritated. So I don't know, there was something about him that I guess I kind of held him, I held a lot of resentment towards him. By that time that happened, I kind of already started catching on that maybe I wasn't there for modeling, and maybe I was just getting used for things, and I felt that I kind of held him responsible. I did receive money to go to these parties. After every party, I was paid by Mr. Epstein. There wasn't, out of all the girls that were there with me, most of them were 13, 14. I think the oldest one might have been 16, just turned 16. And she'd been there for a while. It was Tiffany. He liked to watch other people have sex. He's a germ, doesn't like germs, so he, rather than partaking, he just watches. So Tiffany had informed him that I was the virgin, and so I was basically, so it was Tiffany who introduced us.
Okay.
Second time that I saw Mr. Trump was same scenario. He was onlooking at an orgy, and Tiffany came over to me and said that Donald Trump had requested that I perform oral sex on him, and I'd never done something like that with anybody, so I was a little nervous. So I walked up to him, and he was sitting there very proud, and I just kind of moved in that direction, and he kind of slapped me away and said, "What are you doing? You need to put a condom on," like I was some dirty filth or something without a condom. Tiffany ran over and handed him a condom and apologized, profusely, and said that would never happen again. And she looked at me and scolded me basically like a child and said that, that's not how, Donald Trump always, anytime you touch his penis, it needs to have a condom on or a glove, and especially when it comes to performing oral sex. So I apologized, and then I performed oral sex on him. And once he was done, he hopped up, and that's the last I saw of him at that party. It's like once he's done, he's out. So.
Okay.
Sometimes before some of the things that I noticed that were weird with him was sometimes before the parties he would come over, and Jeffrey Epstein and himself would kind of banter back and forth, and he was Donald Trump was very racist. He said a lot of racist things. Like there was a lot of comments towards Mr. Epstein about being Jewish. And called him a Jew bastard, so that he was cheap. And there was some words I didn't even understand. Something about his the shape of his penis being directly related to his mole. Or I'm not too familiar with the the Jewish traditions. So, but I'm pretty sure that whatever he was saying wasn't very nice. Also referred to, people of Hispanic or, Hispanic name, they called them spics. That was around the first time that the World Trade Center had gotten the bombed in the 90s. And he was, talking about the towel heads and how, we would just be better off if we, didn't let him in, or, basically got rid of every single one that was already here. And I felt it made me really uncomfortable, really, really uncomfortable. He also loved to call black people niggers, and Arabic people he called sand niggers. The only time that he tried to give me some money was our last encounter together, where he acted out a rape fantasy. I was forced to give that money back because Jeffrey Epstein paid us after the party. So, but he just gave me the money. I don't even know why he gave it to me. Maybe to make me feel more cheap, but it was a pretty. It was a rape fantasy to him, but I wasn't playing. So. There was those 2 times, and then there was after the next thing that Tiffany approached me with was that he had a fantasy where he walked in on his maids basically making out, and that it was some type of fantasy for him. So she asked. I was at that point. I was like, I don't want to be involved with anything that has to do with him. But she's like, you were just basically the other one. So there's nothing that you will have to do. Just don't, he's requesting you to be involved. So I reluctantly, I felt like I didn't have a choice there. But it was basically he's walking in, his 2 maids. I was one of the maids. I was the white maid. And there was a Spanish girl, Maria, who was the Hispanic maid. And we were making out, and he walks in, and he gets really angry and threatens to call immigration on Maria if she doesn't come over and make things right and give him a blowjob. So while she is over there giving him a blowjob, I am just trying to, I'm supposed to look scared, like, oh no, and cleaning up things and pretending like I'm trying to go back to my job as a maid. And then he's being so rude to Maria. I felt so bad for her, even though I guess it just didn't seem like a fantasy. It didn't seem like it's the weirdest fantasy as far as that. He was threatening to call immigration on her, so that she didn't know how to. She wasn't even near going down to give him. Perform oral sex on him before he slapped her away and said, what are you doing? You need to put a condom on, and she's trying to, I'm so sorry, and he's like, you can't even understand what you're saying, it just, you speak English, he called her derogatory comments, and then he's like, you know what, you don't know what you're doing, have her come over and show you how it's done. And so I said that I didn't, I had to go over there, or else he was going to call immigration on Maria. I didn't know if it was true or not, but I felt that, he said that if I didn't show her how to perform oral sex on him, then he was going to call immigration on her and then get rid of us both. It was anything that was in relation to him getting off or being satisfied or happy had to do with him being in power, but extreme power. And it's very hard to even. It was always intimidating when he was like that. It was always, you didn't really know if it was true or. Like if you refused to play along, would he really call immigration on Maria? Would he really get rid of us both? And I didn't even want to know what that meant. I always didn't. It wasn't a game. It just felt like it wasn't a game. Yeah. The one night that I had the blonde wig on, he mentioned that I looked like, that I reminded him of his daughter. And actually the maid fantasy, I didn't have a blonde wig on. I was trying to stay away from blonde wigs at the time. But he actually told Tiffany that that's what he wanted me to wear. Like, he wanted it, and anytime I put it on, anytime I had it on and he'd see me, he would say, "Oh man, you look," and it wasn't like "Oh, you remind me of my daughter." It was this sick, evil, like, you remind me of my daughter. It was just this weird pleasure, sick smile. Like, I don't even want to know what he was thinking about. I could imagine what he was thinking about. After the parties would end, we were to report to Mr. Epstein and basically tell him everything that happened, with who, what they liked, what they disliked, if there was any requests, if there was any talk about anything. That's what, we told Mr. Epstein everything. And then he paid us, and then we got to go home. And with me, I would either, I normally got taken to the airport, so to go back home. The fact that Trump has a chance to be the next president makes me feel disgusting inside. I've always been proud to be an American. I think we live in a beautiful country. But I just see him ruining everything. He's a horrible, what he portrays on the outside isn't even that great, but people don't even know the half of how evil, how sick and twisted that man is. I have a friend that's been my friend ever since the school year that I stopped going, the 8th grade. I confided her, and she knows all about it. She knows everything. I mean, I destroyed everything of, any planes. I couldn't risk my dad finding out. And now I think I'm old enough to where at that point I didn't want to not be his little girl, I didn't want to lose my dad. Basically, I would never, as far as keeping proof of any of the trips, the only person, I never told my parents, there would be no happy, there would be no good outcome of telling my parents. They would have grounded me. I would have never been allowed out of the house. My father would have come unglued. I did tell a friend, she's still my best friend to this day. She knows everything. She knows it all. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to save the country that I believe that we have. I know what he does behind closed doors. If that's all, I'm willing to sacrifice my life to put our country back in the right, going maybe in some type of positive direction. Not even, there's no right or wrong, but a positive direction. This guy's not going to take us anywhere positive. As far as my life changing by coming out with this information, I've thought long and hard about whether or not I should. And I've gone back and forth. But I think that I think that the American people need to know what kind of man this person is. And if my life changes because of that, then so be it. But the American people need to know what they're dealing with. If I had the chance to talk to Donald Trump, I would run the other way. I'm scared of him like I've never been scared of anything else in my entire life. I can't explain it to you, but the fear of him even being in the next room, I have a panic attack. The last encounter that I had with Donald Trump, Tiffany approached me about a rape scene that was supposed to be played out, and I didn't like the sound of that at all. But Tiffany assured me that it wasn't going to be, if it was anything I wasn't comfortable with, we could stop. That she would be right there, and that it wouldn't get out of hand, and that it was a fantasy, like it wasn't really going to happen. And so I told her that I would. She basically, Tiffany was always nice to me. It wasn't that I trusted her, else and I wouldn't always trusted her or done what she asked me to. But she was there, and he came in, and I was basically tied to a bed with pantyhose, and he tied him. They were so tight, it hurt to even lay there. And I tried to say something, and it was like, he just, shut up, shut up, bitch. It was basically like he was being really, really rough. And I understand. It just didn't seem like a fantasy. And I started to get scared, and he was, basically ripping my clothes off, and I was actually I got freaked out. I told him that I didn't want to do this. I screamed over for Tiffany. She was like, Mr. Trump, she's only, this is scaring her. And he's like, oh, you shut up too. He just turned into this animal. It was like a completely different person. It was like everyone in the room was scared of him, and I was. It was like I couldn't do anything about it, and he ripped off all my clothes, and he started to basically have sex with me, and I was screaming because I'd never had sex before. It was my first time, and Tiffany was yelling at him too. She was saying that I was a virgin, and he told us to just shut the fuck up, and just basically took my virginity while I was crying and telling him to stop. And that's basically begging for him to just stop. And Tiffany didn't know what else to do either. No one was there to help us, or me. And so after the fact, he basically finishes it. It didn't take that long at all. But it felt like it was like 5.5 hours. It felt like it was an eternity. I don't even know how long it was, but he was done, and I was crying, and Tiffany was consulting me, and she was, apologizing. She told me that she just never put me in that situation again. But he comes over mad because I was crying, and he said that I should be thankful that someone like Donald Trump took my virginity. He basically didn't say took my virginity. He said, I should be glad that someone like Donald Trump popped my cherry, and not some pimply little 14-year-old. And I just was like, what if I said, what if I get pregnant? Not even talking to him. I didn't want to talk to him. I was talking to Tiffany. And he said, well, you'll get an abortion then, bitch, and then just walked away. And I asked, I went, I told Tiffany I needed to go home. I never went back again. I guess it's for you to decide, if I don't have any kids myself, because I'm afraid to have kids, because I mean, who knows what kind of damage they can get into, but if you have a 13-year-old daughter and would you be okay with the person who's running our country doing that to your little girl? And I don't know. I just want people to know. I think that I have a faith in our society that will make the right choice. He seemed to be taking great pleasure in like dominance and control, and just the more I screamed, the more I got scared, the more he was enraged and like enraged with power, and it was like he was just charged with it. It was scary. My experience with Donald Trump has made it to where I can't be in a healthy relationship, much less I can't be in a relationship without myself sabotaging it. I don't do well. I've been in a couple of relationships. I mean, they're never of interest to me normally, but one in particular that was he was a wonderful man, and I completely, knowing I had like subconsciously, I couldn't even control myself. It was like I had to get him out of my life because, I don't know why. It was like anytime anyone loves me, I don't feel worth it, or, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I can't. Friends, I can have guys that are acquaintances, but I just, anytime it's maybe someone expressed anything else besides that, I can't. I take some type of pleasure, I don't take pleasure in it, but subconsciously, whether I mean to or not, sometimes I've meant to. It's like I've purposely hurt their feelings just so they'll never talk to me again. Like, I make sure that it's not ever a possibility. Donald Trump destroyed my feeling of self-worth and my self-esteem when it was still growing, like when it just bloomed. It hadn't even had a chance to experience anything. I have only spoken to one therapist about this just recently, actually. For a long time, I really tried to forget about it. Just tried very hard. But I've been to counseling for other things, and I went to counseling for the previous relationship that I was sabotaging, and my counselor said, something has happened to you where you need to deal with that. That's actually what kind of was like, He knew that there was something that had happened where I was sabotaging these relationships, but he said that it was my responsibility to deal with it, of course. This situation with Donald Trump has destroyed my self-esteem, and it's made it to where I feel like it's destroyed part of my life. The only healthy relationship I've completely demolished. And I love to choose the dysfunctional ones that I know I can just push away. After what happened with him, I can't trust a man ever again. Thinking about it just makes me sick to my stomach. So when something so traumatic happens to someone that's so young, you never, ever really get over it.